an introduction to using the Canvas platform. So when you sign into the Canvas platform, use the same email to log in that you've been using when you sign up for the TESOL course. So when you email Simon Baker or you email to somebody at TESOL, whatever email address that was that you used, use that same email to sign into Canvas, because when Simon puts your name on the Canvas list, he uses the email address that he's been seeing you give him. And if you use a different email address, then you won't be able to sign into the Canvas platform. So your username is your email, and then you create a password and review the Canvas homepage. There's an opening few paragraphs that give you background information on Canvas, and it's very helpful to read that through. Once you begin the modules, you should work through them consecutively. Don't jump ahead, and complete each quiz that you come to ensure access for the next module. If you don't complete those quizzes in the order that they're presented, then it's very possible that you won't be able to sign into the next module. If you cannot access a module or a quiz, if it's grayed out and it won't let you to do something, or you have other questions, please email for guidance to the info@tesolcanada.org email address, and somebody will respond to you. Now, that's the email that Dr. Valley referred to a few minutes ago, and he or Simon Baker would email back to you to answer whatever question you have. We're going to take a look at the Canvas website now. If I can get signed into it, that'll be very helpful. This is not an active link, so I can't go in through this way. So that's the end of that PowerPoint presentation. It's just a brief presentation just to get you started and oriented to it. Any questions on that, folks? Listening, speaking, reading, and writing. These are the 4 language skills. And if you've already started to read your Canvas platform, you will encounter these 4 language skills as the beginning of the readings that you're doing. You should read through everything very thoroughly on the Canvas platform, because the exams that you will have, the midterm exam in a couple of weeks, and then the final exam at the end of the course, rely heavily on the Canvas platform, which goes beyond just what you find on these PowerPoint presentations. So the PowerPoint presentations are to give you highlights of what's in the Canvas platform. So read the Canvas platform very thoroughly, and as I was doing when I did the course back in spring of 2020. When I was reading through the course material on Canvas, I was constantly making short little notes, point form notes that I used to study from later on. And I would recommend that you do the same sort of thing, so that you have basically a Coles Notes version of what you see in the PowerPoint, and it gives you a point form to study from for the exams. Listening is a two-way street. You have speech and sound. The sound is initiating from the speaker. There are speaking categories, there are tones, intonations, accents, and just like piano keys, there are different keys, different notes, and different tones that have different sounds to them. The listener, the receiver of the information, is processing what they hear, and they create an image in their mind as they hear it. It relates to a meaning that they have an understanding about, And just like reacting to music, which could be sad or happy, mood changes can occur with speech and sound as well. Speech classifications. There are two main headings, monologue and dialogue. Under monologue, you have planned speech with no redundancy, unplanned, which has more redundancy, and one must process long stretches of speech without an interruption. Under dialogue, you have interpersonal or social speech, transactional, which is actual information you're conveying to the listener, unfamiliar, you add references with that, and familiar with the subject, whatever the subject is. The second language learners need to pay attention to the factual information. Kinds of listening performances. Reactive, listening to the surface structure of an utterance. Intensive is focusing on certain components of the discourse. Responsive is eliciting immediate response from the learners. Selective is scanning the material for specific information. Extensive is developing a top-down global understanding of the utterance. Interactive is including all of the above as students actively participate in discussions, debates, conversations, role play, etc. Any questions, folks?
Is this PowerPoint going to be posted or emailed anywhere?
No, it will show up in the video that's on.
Okay.
That'll go on
Sure.
the YouTube channel, so you can
Okay.
see it. You can see the PowerPoint again.
Okay. Thank you.
But it's not posted anywhere for you to download or anything like that.
Okay.
Teaching listening comprehension. In an interactive, develop listening comprehension competence, their techniques should be intrinsically motivating, appeal to the listeners. The techniques should utilize authentic language and contexts using real-world tasks. Carefully consider the form of the listener's responses to assess their comprehension. Encourage the development of listening strategies, such as the following: looking for key words, looking for nonverbal cues to meaning, predicting a speaker's purpose by the context of the spoken discourse, guessing at meanings, seeking clarification, and listening for the general gist. Now, regardless of what your mother tongue is, whether it's English or Chinese or whatever it is, it doesn't matter what your mother tongue is. You've all gone through these different steps when you're learning the speech of your mother tongue, or when you're learning to listen properly in a school classroom. You've gone through these processes. You've done this before. So this is not new information for you. It might be the first time you've seen it expressed and written out in words such as this, but I'm sure if you stop for a moment and think back to your learning activities, you were using these processes even as a young child. And if you have your own children, you've watched this occur already with their speech development. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
How many of you have children? Do any of you have children?
I have children.
Yeah, so you've probably seen this sort of thing occur as your kids begin to talk, Carlo.
Yes, definitely.
I have one son who now is 30 years old. He's grown up and living in Montreal. And but when he was a very young child, we used to carry him in a little car seat in the back of the car, and we would very often go to Tim Hortons to buy a coffee, and then we would drive around. He liked to drive around and look at construction sites, so we would do that. But one day we were in the Tim Hortons drive-through, and I pulled up to the window, and before I could say anything, Jordan piped up from the back seat and he said, "Two coffee, double, double," which was what our standard order was. And the attendant laughed very hard and gave us our coffee and gave him an empty cup to play with. And he was thrilled with that. But he was using keywords that he had heard, and he didn't know what coffee was. He'd never tasted it. He didn't know what double double meant. He just knew the sounds of those words, and he was guessing at the meaning of it. And he knew that when we went through the Tim Hortons drive-through, that was appropriate language to use, and so he used it, and it was very funny. We laughed a lot too. But kids are delightful, and kids can be a lot of fun to watch them play with words as they learn how to use the language in a very appropriate manner according to the circumstances. So just a little anecdote about language learning. Bottoms up and top down listening techniques. Include both bottoms up and top down listening techniques when you're teaching your lessons. Now, bottoms up is processing proceeds from sounds to words to grammatical relationships to lexical meanings, etc., to a final message. So the bottoms up starts with the basic sounds and then the words, and builds it into grammatical relationships up to the lexical meanings, etc., to form a final sentence or paragraph. Top-down processing is evoked from a bank of prior knowledge and global expectations, a general look. So top-down is like flying in an airplane at 10,000 feet and looking down at the ground below to understand the broader picture, the bigger picture. Bottoms up, at the same time, bottoms up is like riding a bicycle on the ground and looking up to see where it is you want to climb to with your language. So those are two fundamental listening techniques. Speaking, factors that affect the oral communication skills. Can you read this all right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The type font size is pretty tiny, so I just want to make sure. Native language is the sound system in the mother tongue which will affect the sounds the student produces when speaking English. The age of the children under the age of puberty stand a chance of sounding like a native. So children who are learning a second language and they have not reached the age of puberty yet will do better with the learning than adults or young adults would. As we get older, it's more difficult to learn how to do new things. I'm sure you've heard the saying, teaching an old dog a new trick. Well, it really does apply with language learning. If you've got an adult learning English for the first time, after they've learned their mother tongue growing up, they're going to have a difficult time with the second language, with the English, that they didn't have with the mother tongue. So it's a process. The innate vocal ability. Some people manifest a phonetic coding ability. They are more attuned to learning. I'm sure you've encountered people in your lives who were very good at learning languages. and they pick up second and third languages very easily. I was fortunate when I was in school to begin studying French when I was in elementary school, and it came very easily to me. But I was still a youngster at the time, and I haven't had the opportunity to practice my French over the years, and so I have lost most of my ability to speak the French because without practice, you lose whatever it is you're attempting to do. Identity and language ego. One's attitude towards speakers of the target language has a profound influence on their ability to learn the new language. If the student, if the adult, young adult or adult student doesn't like the teacher, then they're not going to do very well at learning the new language. Or if they don't like the material, or if they're being forced to learn a new language and it wasn't something they wanted to do. So keep that in mind. Always be nice to your students and they'll be nice to you. Motivation and concern for proper pronunciation. The motivation will strongly influence their results. Again, this goes to the point of whether the student wants to learn the new language and they're there by their own choice, or if they're being required to be there to learn the new language. You might have adults who are in business and their boss is requiring them to learn the new language, or learning English in this case. Uh, so they're doing it because they know if they learn the new language, they're going to get a pay raise or they're going to do better with their work of serving international customers, for instance. But if you've got students in high school who are being forced to learn a new language by their parents, then they likely won't do as well because they're being forced against their will, and it's not something that they chose to do. It's something that their parents chose for them to do, and they don't like it. Any questions, folks?
No.
I keep asking if there are any questions because usually by now I've had several questions from people in the class, so I don't want to miss any questions if you have them. But that's fine. If you don't have any questions, that's okay too. That's fine. All righty. Keep going then. Speaking performances. There are 6 types of listening performances that were listed: reactive, intensive, responsive, selective, extensive, and interactive. It is the same for speaking. We have imitative, which is imitation that is performed not for the purpose of meaningful interaction, but for focusing on some particular element of language form, such as drills. There's intensive. This goes one step beyond the imitative to include any speaking performance designed to practice some phonological or grammatical aspect of the language. And responsive is short replies, not dialogues. Transactional, which is dialogue, exchanging specific information, extended form of responsive. And interpersonal dialogue is for the purpose of maintaining social relationships. So, as a teacher in a classroom, you should do a few things, but one very important thing is at the beginning of the class, before everybody has arrived, strike up a conversation with your students, as I did with Michelle and Carlo before the other ladies arrived today. So you have a conversation, it's an interpersonal dialogue, and it's strictly for the purpose of maintaining social relationship and getting to know each other a little bit and finding out a little bit about backgrounds and that sort of thing. And now we can go to types of reading. So we're done listening and speaking. Now we're going to do reading and writing. Extensive reading we typically do for joy or enjoyment. So we might read a magazine article or a favorite book, something of that nature for enjoyment. But intensive reading would be reading for a specific purpose. For example, a newspaper article to read about something that is going on in the world somewhere. Communicative versus academic reading. Emails and memos are communication methods versus textbook or study modules for academic reading. And reading out loud for pronunciation versus silent reading for meaning. Academic reading structures leads to introduction, main point, and conclusion. The different sections of an academic reading piece of material. Discourse markers we look for in structures, sometimes in a written piece. The author would say, first, I would like to state such and such a fact. Secondly, I would say that two of the points in my first paragraph are most important. The next, or in addition, or furthermore, those are discourse markers that are used to identify sections within the reading that we're doing. And we have other discourse markers that are connecting words. However, alternatively, therefore. So with these discourse markers, they provide an alternative to large, long sentences that would take up more space. Reading assessment, academic reading tasks, pre-reading strategies. During reading strategies, discourse markers, and connective writing, respond to comprehension questions, similar to IELTS reading tasks, authentic texts from college studies, integration in your lesson plan. Those are all points that you can make use of in academic reading. And then there's added speed reading, skimming the text, guess the meaning of the text or the word. That's guessing the gist. The implied meaning and discourse, and the purpose of the reading or text. In silent reading, intensive silent reading is for content, bottom up. Extensive silent reading is for scanning, top down. Now, under point number 4 in the first column is mention of the IELTS reading tasks. Have any of you done the IELTS exams, the IELTS reading or listening exams?
I think I did a long time ago. Maybe not helpful. I think so. And I've worked with students who are preparing for that. So I have some of that material.
So you'll be familiar with what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that Michelle?
That's great. Yep, that's me.
Yeah, okay. I can't tell who's talking.
No.
With the PowerPoint up, I can't see anybody.
Oh, okay, right. Yes, it's Michelle.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
IELTS experience is something that all of you should try the IELTS exams to get that experience. And you can try sample exams on the IELTS website. You can do sample questions, which is very beneficial. We'll have a look at those on another day. Writing, communicative, and academic. Under academic writing, we have process writing. pre-writing strategies such as brainstorming, and then writing, formulating the ideas, review, and self-edit, and post-writing strategies, editing, rephrasing, change of orders, composition, rewriting, conclusion, etc. Then the text structure, the introduction, the main point, and conclusion, those are the three integral parts of a text, written text. And writing assessment, the authentic material and integrated with the lesson plan. What do you think they mean by authentic material? Anybody?
Integrating. Would that be something that they would naturally come across on a daily basis?
Yes, and even more specifically, if you have a group of adult students who are all engineers, then
Right.
authentic material could be something such as a handbook or a guide for how to operate a specific piece of machinery, or
Right.
how to build a building, or something
Okay.
that is specific to their line of work.
Right.
And that makes it authentic for them, so that when they're learning the English language, they're learning words that they will be able to use
Mhm.
in their daily workplace experience.
Okay.
So authentic to the group of students. And then you integrate that with the lesson plan. You can build a lesson plan around an authentic piece of written material. A little booklet, you can make photocopies of a little booklet,
Mhm.
and it could be how to set up and operate a photocopy machine, for instance, or any piece of electronic equipment. And you could photograph that, photocopy that, and use the photocopies to teach the English words for the different parts of the machinery and the different processes. Now, using authentic material does require that the teacher becomes confident with speaking in certain languages that might not be their own background. So there's a little bit of homework, a little bit of studying to do, and learning some new words, that type of thing. But that's always quite interesting anyway, especially if you're a language person like I am. I love learning new words and love learning new language material. So it works out quite well. I was a high school teacher for a number of years. I taught visual arts and English.
Oh.